All right.
That sounds terrible.
I know. It's like, yeah, I know. I need to like figure something else out about these mics, but
No, I like it though. It's a great setup.
thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, I've actually had some people reach out wanting to use the studio space recently.
Oh, there.
So it's kind of cool.
Funny.
Yeah, right. I know. So it's been a while, but you were on, when was that? In June?
Was it June or late May? June?
I don't remember. I'll have to find it. But yeah, it was.
I was just looking at it on my phone.
It was a while ago, and we got a lot of hate. What was wild about the last episode was that I posted it and it got like no views almost. It was only like at 20 something views. I'm like, man, this one's not taking off. And then all of a sudden one day I'm at work and I'm like my phone's blowing up and I'm looking at YouTube and I'm like, what is going on? Like the views just shot up like crazy. And then I think I reached out to Brooke and I'm like, hey, you guys might want to pay attention to what's going on this episode.
We had already seen it. My campaign manager, probably just a couple hours prior to what you said, had already posted a picture about how it was blowing up big time. And, I like to call it the comment, right? The swamp town. Oh man.
Well, what's interesting about that interview was that it was clear to me, like talking to you, that you were nervous. Like you had mentioned, it was the first time you had ever done a podcast or an interview or even publicly even talked about your campaign, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And so the questions that I'm asking weren't like hard questions at all. We're just kind of like talking back and forth, but you could tell that you're a little nervous.
Yes.
It was obvious that you're nervous. And so like, you're not going to word things
exactly how you want it.
Exactly what you're thinking, exactly how you want. We're just talking and having a conversation.
Yep.
And then you have these people who are just like nitpicking literally every single thing you said.
Yeah.
And they're taking it way out of proportion.
I felt like they were really treating me like I was a tenured politician, right? Like they weren't really coming at it with the angle of, well, he's a new guy on the street.
Let's give him a chance.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I really had that with some people.
Why do you think that is? Do you think because they already have like an established ground with Ryan Coast?
More than likely, yeah. I mean, obviously he's always going to have his hardcore defenders, right? And that's perfectly fine. I understand that completely. There's a lot of people that believe in Mr. Cost and
Cost. It's Cost.
It
right?
is Cost.
Okay,
yeah.
I said Coast.
Yeah.
Cost.
There's a lot of people that believe in him, and I'm not going to bash anyone for that. That's completely fine. I think I took it as a compliment afterwards. So once I kind of we did an assessment, me and my team, right, about what had happened during that, and I knew in my heart after watching it, that wasn't my best performance. But like we said, it my first time publicly talking about it. I'm new.
Right.
I didn't really even know how to relay things, I guess. I knew in my heart I had good ideas, I have good intentions, but I didn't realize how relaying things in specific ways, especially when it comes to politics, is so important.
Right.
And so obviously I've learned and I've grown just over a couple months. And I feel like I gained very useful knowledge. I would call it executive management, right?
Right.
Calm under pressure, straight face in the in the storm. But anyways, once we did our analysis, and I didn't even really do damage control. I more just ignored what was being said, because I did mention the comment in the next interview, the America 20 to Life, because there were people that were upset and they felt like I was saying that seriously, which I thought, even rewatching it, it's pretty clearly I was joking around.
Right.
And obviously that has historical significance as well, right? Lansing was a swamp town. People were lied to about Lansing when it was first created, saying, oh, there's fish so thick you can walk across the Grand River, and everything like that. And they were selling plots of land to people in Detroit, for Detroit. And then they would come out here and they were like, what in the heck is this place? And then they kept going, and then that was Grand Rapids. So Yeah, it was just a lighthearted anecdote, really. It was never anything serious. So I addressed that in America 20 to Life, and I feel like people were okay with that. Otherwise, the other things that I had said that people pointed out were inconsistent. They were simply just I had been doing as much research as possible in a very short amount of time, reading a lot of articles, looking up historical whatever, right? And obviously I mixed up a couple news articles that I had read. At no point was I bashing anybody. I feel like I was saying it in a way that was...
Well, I mean, because I know that you're referencing the Fledge thing right now.
Yeah.
I had felt what you were saying about the Fledge wasn't a bad thing.
No.
None of it was bad.
No.
But people took it as bad because it was just misinformation. It wasn't correct information.
Exactly.
So they were attacking you like you were just like spreading this wild,
terrible lie,
and it wasn't. That wasn't the case at all.
It was just a mistake. I mixed up two news articles that were talking about similar things.
Right. But what was sad to me was that you see like kind of a public person taking this like very verbal stance against another candidate who didn't even like reach out to you to be like, hey, no, you're wrong about this. Like you should correct this or whatever. No, they were just attacking you.
Yes. Yep. I just accepted it for what it was. Like I said, there's going to be people that are going to defend Mr. Koss, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So
that's their guy.
And that's okay. And I knew that going in.
Yeah.
Even with the primary, I don't know if you looked at the numbers. It's clear that Mr. Koss still has a relative lead on me. I mean, if you just assume that the people that voted for Mr. Taft will also vote for me, that's going to give me around a 40% mark of votes.
Where were you in the first election? Like how far? Like what was the...
I had 480 something, 82, and then Ryan had 1,700. So I had about 30%. Wow. Yeah.
Wow. And I mean,
Marco had 9% or something.
Okay. I mean, he's obviously been around. People know his name, and they'll more than likely vote for him because they just know him.
Right. Yeah. And, I knew that was going to be one of the hardest parts going into it because he is new, right? He's only been in position for a handful of months now, 8 or 9 months. 9 because it's September. And I knew that people might still vote for him in the back of their mind being like, oh, he hasn't really had a chance to prove himself yet.
Right.
And so I knew that he did technically have an upper hand on me, not just because he was an incumbent, but because he hasn't even had time to do stuff, right?
Right.
Although I would argue that in 9 months you could do a lot, especially if you're in a position like that. But that might be the perception someone else has, and so they would vote for him because they were like, "Well, I want to give him his chance." So
right.
I knew that going into this, and I had people ask me too. Why would you even go against him? He's such a great guy. He's such a perfect guy. Well, I think we've learned recently with that article at City Pulse that we were talking about. Everyone has skeletons in the closet, and I think he might not be as good of a person as everyone thought he was.
Right.
And so it came very clear to me once that article leaked that he last year did this whole thing where he was like, I'm never going to attack my opponent. Which I get, like, not going after them like super aggressively, but I think if you're going to go against somebody, you should feel confident in saying, hey, this is my point of view, and this is why I think you're incorrect, right?
Right.
So he never really even did that when it came to Brian Daniels. Well, now it's clear that he was doing that because he did have some pretty significant skeletons in his closet, and he was trying to conceal that. And so... like me as a constituent, because I do live in his ward still, right? I'm personally embarrassed. As his opponent, I will never talk badly about that. I will never use that against him because I want to win fair and square, and I want people to believe in my point of view and what I'm doing. But as a constituent, I am embarrassed. And
I think we should point out what it was, though.
Yeah,
because we're talking about it, and I do have the article pulled up. It's a City Pulse article. That was released in July. Here, I'll read it. Put it on the screen. not. Okay, so here it is. Friday, July 28th. First Ward Lansing City Council member Ryan Cost has changed his story about being unaware for the last 13 years that he owed over $10,000 to Eaton County District Court stemming from an auto accident. Cost, who is on the August 8th primary election ballot, first maintained he didn't know about the debt until this week. However, presented by the city politics with contrary evidence yesterday, he admitted to knowing about it for nearly 2 years. Until last night, Cost claimed ignorance about the $10,345 in outstanding fines, fees, and restitution expenses stemming from a 2010 misdemeanor conviction for leaving the scene of an accident causing injury. But court records show Cost responded to a collection letter from 56A District Court in Eaton County in August of 2021. The debt was first reported by the Lansing State Journal on Wednesday. Cost was quoted by the outlet as saying, "I didn't know I owed anything from 13 years ago, but I certainly will be paying that immediately." He made the claim in a face-to-face recorded interview with the city politics yesterday afternoon at a Southside eatery. In that interview, he claimed to have never received any notification or communication from 56A District Court about the debt. He said a letter from the court could conceivably have been thrown away. Wow. It might have been in the mailbox, Cost said, but that his husband grabs the mail too, and I don't see it for weeks, or he just throws it away. Or what happens is it gets piled up. And I assume that's the junk pile. And I've done this before and thrown it away. However, subsequent to that interview, Amy Etzel, the 56A District Court administrator, confirmed yesterday that the court had communicated with Cost in August of 21, and that Cost confirmed that the communication had occurred. Both Cost and Etzel said he had responded to the court collection letter by asking for a copy of the court file, which was provided to him. He said he subsequently requested a copy of the recording of the hearing because he believed he had gone to jail for a year in lieu of having to pay the fine, fees, and restitution for the 2010 accident. I never heard back from them. He said when reached on Facebook, I again assumed that what I believed to be the original agreement was upheld. My assuming was my fault. Asked again today why he first told City Politics and Journal that he was unaware of the debt, but then admitted that he had received the 21 collection letter. He repeatedly refused to give a direct answer. So he was caught in a lie.
Yep.
Instead, he said, I was under the impression that I thought to be the original deal was upheld. So when they informed me a few days ago, that was not the case. I was ignorant as to why I was still there. It was still there. Cost has begun repaying the debt, Etzel said. Several days ago, a wage assignment was filed with the court. Etzel wrote, so he filed for a debt arrangement or a pay arrangement.
Yeah, wage
after he was
caught. Yep.
Wow.
Even though he had received letters and communicated with the court prior to that.
So he was interviewed first by the city politics, asked about it.
Yes.
And then signed up for the payment arrangement.
Yes.
Wow.
And then he claimed ignorance, and so when they dug into it more, that's when they found all of this.
Right.
Because, whenever I get something from a court or the IRS, I just chuck it in the trash too. So.
Oh my gosh. Wow. So, should I finish reading this or?
No, I mean it's pretty straightforward from there. They probably mentioned he also had they had received a letter from one of his ex partners that he had a restraining order on Mr. Cost for being violent against him and stealing money. And
oh, here it is. Yeah, let's read that part too.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. The Journal also reported that Nathan Jansen obtained a personal protection order against Cost in 2013. The two had been dating in a dating relationship, and Jansen alleged Cost stole money, bit him several times, hit him, causing a black eye, and had high blood alcohol levels on a home test. The PPO was signed by the then circuit judge, Judge Laura Baird.
I think so.
The Journal also reported Jansen did not respond to a message on Facebook seeking comment. And wow.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of skeletons.
It's a lot.
That is a lot. So knowing that information and not using it, I mean, obviously we're talking about it on the podcast, but it's all public information now.
Right.
It was put out by the City Pulse.
I am not saying this in here to bash him in any way.
Right.
I'm talking to you right now as more of a constituent.
Right.
Like, I am embarrassed as a constituent. If one of our senators had that happen, I'd be embarrassed too, right? Or a representative, whatever.
Yeah.
Governor, doesn't matter.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing. And there's obviously like you said, there's a reason why he didn't want to bash his opponents.
Mm-hmm. He didn't want him to dig. Yeah.
Wow. Who did that research? Do you know?
That was Todd Haywood, I believe. City
okay.
Pulse. He's now gone to WLNS. He works at WLNS. So.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I just recently befriended him.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. I like Todd a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Burl helped him with it too. The chief editor.
He did an article on you, didn't he?
Yeah, Todd did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, the first article that came out, it blew our minds, right? Because we didn't know anything was going on. The City Pulse told me initially that they were going to be running background checks on everybody on everyone, and I was like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. And then that was probably right before we had done our first, is when they kind of released like a on
everybody, right?
Yeah. And then this comes out, and that obviously they were digging into things that they had found, because Mr. Taft, which was the other guy on the ballot too, right? He had a whole laundry list of stuff, which it was pretty funny. I mean, he had I think he had one felony charge.
Oh my gosh, for what?
Running from the police, because he had his daughter in the car and he wanted to make sure she would get home.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I mean, he made a choice, and now he's got, but that was the headliner of the article was, city ward candidates have felonies, misdemeanors. And I was like, oh, so I'm starting reading it. And I'm like, did he find something on me too? And then they never even mentioned me. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll take it.
So this is the question. Does something like that hinder you? Should it hinder you from being able to be in a position like that?
Okay, so initially, right, so it's a misdemeanor is what he was charged with, right? So no, I don't think that should hinder him from being able to hold office. The concern that I have personally, and I think other people do as well, is the fact that he owes $10,000 now, right? So someone that has a significant amount of debt like that, I mean, I think that kind of opens up the, got to be careful how I say it, but that opens up the corruption book, right? Now he owes a lot of money. He's getting wage garnishments.
But should that matter though? Because you could have any kind of debt, right? Like you could have a car payment, you could have a house payment, you could have.
That's true.
I mean, should that affect whether or not you're in a position like that?
Should overall debt affect if you?
Does it matter the kind of debt?
Does it matter the kind of debt? No, you're right on that. I agree. Should there probably be an overall limit of how much debt you can be in before you should? I think so. Yeah. For a political position. So I believe to go to can't even think of what it is, like pastor school. If you want to be
a minister.
No, to be a minister. Yeah. You actually have to have a cumulative amount of debt less than $10,000. And they do that because obviously donations to church and everything like that. Right. And I know that because I worked with a guy who wanted to go to ministry school, but he was working at Meyer at the time because he had to pay down his debt before they would accept him in.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
I mean, that's kind of how the military is too.
Is it?
Yeah, you can't have, because they don't want you to go to basic and then have debt collectors coming after you.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
So,
because then they would know exactly where you were.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I guess I get it. Maybe it should be prorated based on your income level.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously some people might make somebody might work at GM, and then somebody else might not. Somebody else might work somewhere else, like
Right.
McDonald's or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I guess I kind of get that, but I don't know.
It's tough, isn't it?
So how are things been going with the election? I mean, or obviously with the election, you are still in it, but with the campaigning and everything,
Really good.
the public feedback and everything, what has that been like?
Generally pretty good for me. Sorry. Yeah, usually when I'm talking to just the general public, a lot of people are really interested in knowing, like, hearing what I have to say. And I think that still stems from the whole, like, I can't believe you're even running against Mr. Cost. I think they're astounded by that. So
Why are they so astounded? Is it because, again, he's just like so out there?
yes.
Everybody likes him for the most part.
Yep, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
He has in general, a overwhelming positive, like, following,
Right.
and so people
Almost like a cult-like following
a little bit
for
yeah.
some people.
Yeah, and so when people are talking to me, they really want to know, like, why I did it. And I was even asked that in the America 20 to Life. They're like, when Adam Hussein re-ran for Ward 3, he didn't have anyone challenge him. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but Adam was established. He had served his 4 years. People knew that he was going to do a really good job, right?
Yeah.
Ryan had just started, and I saw a gap, and I felt that I would be a really good candidate to run against him.
Yep.
And that's why I made that decision. And then I start talking about, where I stand on certain things. Whatever. I generally let people ask me or tell me what they're concerned about, because I could sit there and I could spew off my platform and, bore everyone to death if you're not interested for whatever reason, public safety or mental health or whatever, So I generally try to have people ask me, like, well, what are you concerned about? That I want to hear what you have to say, and then I'll tell you what I believe.
So what has been the most, I guess, like, brought up concern?
Definitely homelessness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a huge problem.
It is. And I was surprised, though, that people were. So
homelessness, I mean, because there's like two different schools of thought here, right? With the homeless problem. I look at it as a problem. I go running on the river trail. There's homeless people camping on the trail. I think that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we want people to come to our city, go to our different attractions, spend money here, people don't want to have their families like wandering around these homeless encampments.
Yeah.
That can be an issue.
Yeah.
Then you have the other people who think about it where, like, they should be able to camp anywhere. They should be able to set up shop anywhere.
Right.
And that should be okay. We should just let them do what they need to do. So what is like the general consensus or the concern?
Okay, so right now, two of the people that have made it forward are Ryan and Jody Washington, right?
Yeah. She's pretty
big.
She's pretty big into the homeless.
She is, yes. Yeah. And so her and Ryan are really good friends. They obviously both live in the first ward. They both run the first ward now as the council people. So they get along really well, and they're on the same page where they believe that the first step to I guess you'd call it transitional housing, I think is the term they used, is to create a tent camp, a sanctuary area where they can set up their tents and people can live and, not be bothered and whatever. So, okay, does that get them out of areas and put them in one spot? Yes. But how many cities do we know that is absolutely backfired? Seattle,
Los Angeles,
Skid Row, Los Angeles. I mean,
San Francisco.
Yeah, keep listening, right? and Mr. Cost talks about like slumlords and all this stuff with renting. If he really wants to see slumlords, make a tent city, because either one or multiple people are going to run every corner of that area, and those are going to be the slumlords, and they're going to run it. So when we were talking about it at the Fledge, they had brought that up, and I said, man, if I was homeless and I went to Sparrow and I said, hey, today's the day. Like, I don't want to be homeless anymore. I need to get my stuff together. And I had a social worker come in and say, yeah, man, we got this nice tent camp for you. I'd feel like I got kicked right in the butt. I mean, what the heck? So I extended the possibility of kind of following. The VA has rent-controlled options for people or for veterans that are going through homeless issues, right? And what they are is they're smaller rooms. They're quick transition. Clean it up once you're done. And it's not like an overnight thing. It's more like that is your room, and you have a time limit or whatever to kind of get back on your feet, and then we help you navigate. And I said, we got plenty of buildings around here where we could easily make smaller rooms that people could have. We could put them in there. They could set up shop for a little while, and obviously I don't know the logistics of it, but we give them a little bit of a time frame, right? 3, 6, 9 months. I don't know. Mm-hmm. You got social workers in there every day. You got psychiatrists and therapists in there every day. You could probably have actual workers that are in there that can assist them with anything going on, especially if they are having a rough night or something, and they're like, I got to get out of here. And, crisis intervention, I guess, would be a good term for that. And we really step it up and help these people and get them on the right foot. And then because when it comes to mental health, which I think we'd be remiss to say that when we talk about homelessness, we're also probably talking about mental health and a majority of the time.
A lot of different issues too, like drug use, drug abuse.
So, mental health is number 3 on my platform. And I've identified that the real issue with mental health is we've got all these programs and ways to help people when they're in the hospital, and we got all these programs when they get out of the hospital, but it's like that 2 to 4 week transition period from leaving the hospital and transitioning back into normal life, and then getting on these programs that they recommended.
Right.
I mean, that's when you're going to see a lot of this relapse, right? Or people not taking their meds or whatever. And then they're just going to get back into that vicious cycle. And so I'm really targeting on that transition point. I think that's where we need to focus. And I think Lansing is in a pretty good spot where we could actually be one of the cornerstone cities to implement something, and help intervene at that critical moment and make sure people are more successful than they are unsuccessful.
I guess the only issue with that is in order to get out of a situation like that, you have to be ambitious and you have to want to get out of that situation.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times with homeless people, they're addicted to drugs. They have mental health issues. And so they struggle of wanting to get out of that comfort zone, because essentially they're in this place of comfort. That's what they know.
There will always be people that choose a transient lifestyle.
Right.
I believe there's actually a Bible verse on that where Jesus says there will always be the homeless or something like that, And so it's just, that's always how it's going to be. What I'm suggesting is, I agree, you do need to be ambitious, but we need to take advantage of that moment of clarity that they have when they are ambitious, and we need to keep helping them ride through it. And I understand how difficult that would be, especially for the people that would be tasked with that, to keep them revved up, ramped up, happy to be what they're doing, right? But we got to find those moments where they're like, I can't do this anymore. I need help. I'm done, right? And we can't just give up hope either, right? I mean, how many people drank their entire life and then one day were like, I'm done. I'm fixing it today, right? Or they stopped smoking or whatever. I mean, everyone has those moments. I know that there are people that no matter how down in the dumps you are, how rock bottom you've hit, you finally hit this moment where you're like, I do need help. And so I just want to make sure that we have people that are there that can be there for them when they have that clarity, and that we can ride that as long as we can and try to get them.
Do you know what kind of resources it would take to accomplish something like that?
As in money total?
Money, what kind of workers, how many workers?
So
do you know the number of the homeless, how many homeless people we have?
I do not know that number.
I would be interested to know how many.
I would be too. I don't know if we actually have a study on that or not.
I'll look at it, but I guess in the meantime,
I've not heard a number, and in all those conversations that I had, all those interviews, everything like that, yeah, no one's ever thrown a number out. So
who would be somebody that would
know that?
Know that.
LPD would be my guess.
Okay.
I would assume, or social workers, maybe.
Right.
I don't know if there's like a specific Lansing social work company, but some sort of like Michigan state run social work.
Probably something to do with homelessness.
Yeah, I'm sure they would have something like that number. But
but as far as resources, what would it take?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is a building of like what I was talking about, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the average lease for a relatively nice sized building is right now, but I'm thinking of something like an old doctor's office. You know what I mean? Like instead of it being a patient room, you could set up a bed in there, maybe a little kitchenette, whatever, because they already have sinks in those.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, we'll call it $1,500 to $2,100 a month to lease that, right? And then we already have social workers. We have community mental health. I don't know if we would actually have to hire anyone other than maybe cleaning staff for that, and maybe some sort of like a director or crisis intervention people, right? To run it. And then with social workers, with CMH, with therapists and psychiatrists, I'm sure a lot of people would be willing to just either donate their time or their profession, or like with CMH, they would probably just automatically be like, right, we love this, we're going to help you however we can, right?
Right.
So I think a lot of it actually would be like volunteer. Like I think we could get away with it relatively cheap. I'm talking
so it'd be like a nonprofit type of thing.
Yeah, no, it would not be a profit.
Because that's one thing that I see. Do you know Mike Carl? He like used to do the Homeless Angels.
Yes,
I think he does like the Cardboard Profits or something now.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
He also works at GM too. But he's always talking about how all these different organizations in Lansing take money from the homeless and the different things that they, I don't know, raise money for.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I don't follow it, but I see him talking about it on social media all the time.
Yeah, no, this would be 100% city run, just for the betterment of that particular community.
Right.
That's my vision for it.
Yeah.
So the building would be city owned, right? The people would be in city employees.
Everything I see so far on here it seems like there's roughly about 500 people that are homeless.
Okay.
On a given night is what it says.
That sounds, yeah, that would make sense for a city. That's a
yeah.
lot.
I mean, it is. I mean, Lansing's not that big, so that is a lot for Lansing.
Yeah.
But in comparison to like LA or something, they have significantly more.
Right.
But yeah, that's a lot of people.
But yeah, that sounds like a controllable number too, though, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that's something where if you got 500 people on average, and then after 3 to 5 years, you could get that down to 250. I mean, a 50% reduction in homelessness sounds like a pretty good test.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, how many of those people too are just like down on their luck?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things I think would be a part of that, right? Like, we talked about the drugs, we talked about the people that are going to choose that lifestyle, but yeah, how many people are like the Will Smith movie? There's
Pursuit of Happiness.
Pursuit of Happiness. Yeah. Like they just made either some bad financial choices or, had to declare bankruptcy and sell their house to pay off anything else. And,
I was homeless once as a kid.
Really?
In Lansing.
Oh man.
Yeah. It was, as a kid, I wasn't that scared because I felt like everything would be fine. But, we moved to Michigan and then we were homeless. We didn't have anywhere to live. So we were staying in a homeless shelter up in St. John's or Fowler. Mm-hmm. And I think now it's like a boys' house or something, like some sort of, I don't know if it's like a, what would you call it? Like a halfway house or something. I don't know if it's something like that.
Yeah.
But for boys, but now it's, or then it was a homeless shelter for women. And we were in there for a few months through the summer. And then my mom ended up she got kicked out because I'm assuming she wasn't making progress or the amount of progress that they wanted to see. So they just like let us go. And so it left us homeless in Lansing, and the Red Cross put us up in a hotel for a while. And then every single night we would go down to the homeless shelter downtown, the rescue mission, and we'd eat dinner there every single night.
Yep.
And it was kind of a crazy experience. I mean, because I remember like looking around at all the homeless people thinking like, man, these people are so unfortunate.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm this 9-year-old kid like standing in line at this homeless shelter waiting to eat dinner.
I know that was a long time ago for you, and you were young and you might not remember everything, but like, I guess the question I would have is, how supported did you feel? Or did you feel like you were just kind of being run through the ringer,
As far as the homeless issue?
Yeah. Like, did you feel like you were supported at all, or do you feel like
I mean, like looking back now, I would say that I don't know. I mean, because there's kind of it's obviously dependent on your situation, right? Like my mom had kids, so I feel like she was able to get more help.
Mm-hmm.
Like through the Red Cross, we were able to stay in a hotel. They
Right.
paid for the hotel, so we had a roof over our head. But as far as like having different programs for like my mom to be able to like put us in daycare so she could go get a job and like have, like even a resource for her to find a better job.
Right.
I don't know if that was available.
Yeah.
And so I also don't know if she was just not able to like find those kind of services or if those services were around at the time. I feel like if there was those kind of services and maybe they offered like her a social worker, somebody who could help kind of guide her through that process, like, okay, you're here, let's get you to this point.
Right.
And then maybe she would have been more successful and maybe she wouldn't have lost her kids into the foster care system, because I know that like she didn't want to lose us. But it's just the fact that she was not able to provide.
Right.
So like if we could prevent like situations like that and like by having, like some sort of clear guidance program, that might be beneficial.
Yeah.
Because like some people just don't know how to like do things in life.
It's true. It's very true.
Some people just, they were just dealt a shitty hand. They weren't taught much from their parents and they're just trying to make it in life. And they have no resources. They don't know how to like do anything. Yeah. And that was the case for my mom. She had 4 kids. 3 of them or 2 of them were under 5, and my brother and Michael and I were, he was 9, I was 8 at the time. Like she had very young kids and she's just trying to like survive. And so I don't know. I just feel like there could have been more resources, but
yeah, I think my idea really is based more off of just a strong support system.
Yeah, that, I mean, honestly, that's what people need guidance. People need somebody that they can go to and kind of like tell them what they need, feel comfortable with them. And I don't know, just guidance, I guess, like you had said.
Yeah. And long term, if something like what I just suggested ever did occur, we could always have kind of like a big brother program too, right? So people that were successful, they could be there and they could take people under their wing and they could, and I'm talking like we would have like group meetings there too, like every night, everyone could sit down and talk, and we could have AA go there, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever the drug anonymous one is. I don't remember what it's called, but
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think it would just be a really nice like hub of, I don't even know what I would call it. Some sort of improvement center, right? Like,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, some people, like I had mentioned, some people just get dealt a shitty hand. And the thing is, like when I moved out when I was 17 years old, and I thought that was going to be me. I'm like, I'm just not going to, I don't have the resources available to like go to college. I don't have the resources available to like even buy a car so I can go get a decent job somewhere. I grew up in Charlotte. There's like, what's in Charlotte, that where you're making decent money. And I just happened to make it out and like find like a good job, and I work at GM now. So like I have a good life. I have a decent way of living. But if I had not like gotten that job, who knows where I would be.
Yeah.
And some people are just kind of stuck in that cycle over and over and over again. They can't get a good job. Inflation and all cost of living, everything's so hard now.
Yep.
And it's so easy for somebody like me who's sitting in a good position to be like, well, they should just get their shit together. But
yeah,
it's hard.
I've said that too, you know. I mean, I have, but you know, I worked at Sparrow. I work at Meyer. I mean, I deal with people that are homeless quite a bit. And although sometimes I do feel like there are certain people that do 100% just choose that, and that's what they're going to do.
Absolutely.
There are there's the few that you see, and you're like, oh, man, like,
yep.
I really do feel like you did not choose this.
Yeah.
You know, you just made a bunch of left turns, and when you should have made a right.
Right.
Or you were just kicked when you were down, and you just gave up, possibly, right? Yep. I mean, you apply for 10 jobs, they all reject you, you know, and you say, whatever, I'm done. I mean,
yep.
And I get that. Like, there are people, everyone has a breaking point, you know. Just because maybe you or me never hit that point with something like that, obviously they did.
Right.
And so I think that's why I really enjoy like that support system idea atmosphere, really trying to uplift people like, listen, everyone has a point. You just happen to hit it, and it's time to flip it around.
I think a lot of people need that one person to just come in their life. Because, I mean, I've had that, you know, in where people just kind of take you by the hand. They just kind of guide you a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes that's all you need. Somebody just be like, hey, look, just get to this point. And once you get to this point, then now you can take the next step to get to the next point.
Right.
And then you have momentum at that point. Then you can like eventually be successful. I mean, that was the case for me. Like, I had people when I first moved out who helped me, some people pay my bills for me. And then eventually, you know, like I was able to get on my own feet, and here I am.
Yep.
And it's a process.
It's tough.
It is tough. And I don't know. I feel like we spend a lot more time talking about it than doing anything.
I agree with that. Because, I mean, we've always, forever, talked about homelessness and, you know, in the U.S. and how we compare to other countries and everything like that. And so it would be very important, I think, to start thinking of different angles we can take.
Yeah. Because
we're already in the process that we're in now, right? I mean, you can look at other countries all you want, but they've made changes for homelessness or whatever long, long ago. And so now we're in a process and how we deal with it. And if we were ever going to make change, we got to start making those baby steps to break that vicious cycle and have something new.
I do got to say that had what was that woman's name? Jody Washington. Yep. If her idea was implemented in Lansing and my mom had gone to search for help with being homeless and they referred us to an encampment, could you imagine what it would be like to raise kids in an encampment?
Not at all.
I mean, there's so many things that happen in homeless communities.
Yep.
People get raped. People are doing drugs, all kinds of things, horrific things.
Yep.
And I wouldn't want children to be in that environment.
Nope. I agree 100%. That's why I shot it down immediately, personally. And yeah, Ryan is on board with it too. He agreed with what she was saying. So I was like, oh, okay.
I like Ryan. Like, he seems like a nice guy. I don't know him. And like I had said, I invited him on the podcast and that didn't work out. But for me personally, as somebody who's from the outside looking in, he seems like he just kind of goes with the flow. He seems like he says whatever is popular and what will get him the votes.
I agree.
And that's just my opinion, and I'm sure I'll get hate for it, but that's just my opinion.
No, I mean, I personally, in our conversations, especially if you watch like that Fledge, it wasn't even really a debate. It was more of a town hall.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, like
just asking questions. Tell me what you think.
Watch the town hall. Like he does flip flop quite a bit in that. If you watch and really listen to what he says, he'll say one thing, and then maybe one or two questions, or sometimes even in the same question, he'll say the complete opposite thing. Like, good example, he says that he is all for businesses because he's trying to compete with my stance of we need to focus on the profit potential of Lansing and getting businesses here, especially with the east side being the biggest moneymaker for this city. So I say that's my stance, right? He tries to combat it by saying, I care about small business, or I care about business in general. But then when they talk about GM, he goes, yep, I don't like GM. Like they've been walking all over us. Or when they ask him right at the beginning, you don't even have to watch that far if you want to see something. They ask him right at the beginning, who's self-funded, and he raises his hand. Mr. Cost is not self-funded. He is endorsed by the Chamber of Commerce and the Realtors Association of Mid-Michigan. So, and that's in the first 5 minutes of that video, I think. And I didn't even know it happened because my campaign team was out there obviously watching, and they told me after the fact, and I was like, what?
So was that ever brought up to him, do you know?
No, I never brought it up. So
no. I mean, because you debated him, right?
Yes. Yeah, I didn't bring it up in that. We had a debate at the Foster Community Center 3 weeks ago, I believe, maybe a month now. I was sick. I can't remember that, but yeah, I had a really bad sinus infection, and we had a pretty heated debate because I had already made the decision before I was even sick that when I went to this, I was going to be a little more firm. I'm not trying to be hostile, but I said, okay, I made it through the primary, which is really what I was concerned about. Like, I stayed in my platform, but I kind of stayed in the shallow end of the pool.
Right.
Because you don't want to ruffle any feathers.
Right.
I want people to know what I stand for, but I also don't want to, just jump in and be like, all right, this is all me now.
Right.
So that's what I did. Made it through the primary. And I said, okay, so now I got this debate at the Foster Center with him, and I said, I'm gonna go into the deep end. I mean, I'm gonna say what I believe. I want people, especially the people that are in my ward, right? That's
all
my
that matters.
debate.
Right.
It's me and him, right?
Yeah.
I said, I'm gonna show him what I'm made of, and I let him have it. I mean, I had already made that decision, and then I was sick on top of it. And I was full of pseudoephedrine and
You're all
antibiotics. And,
all methed up.
Yep. So I definitely, I stayed on topic, right? I remained consistent. I didn't attack him personally. I just stated, I made it very clear the things that he does, what I don't like about him, and how I would change it or how I would be different. And
what was his response to the things that you had brought up?
Man, dude, it was a long interview. It was long. It was in about an hour.
Was it videoed at all?
That's what I don't know, because I was that messed up. I know that there was a Zoom going on. I remember that specifically, but I don't know because for Zoom you have to pay the professional prices to tape. Otherwise, you got to do it 30 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. And I just had a City Pulse interview on Wednesday. And he asked me the same thing. He's like, where is the video for this? And I'm like, dude, I don't know if there is one. So he's going to go searching for it too. But I'm trying to remember some of the best questions. So I'm really going to let you in on this now.
Good. Please do.
So one of the first questions that I'm remembering is it was a community question, and somebody had asked if there is a juvenile that has a violent gun crime, are you for or against charging them? And I was like, okay, that's a tough question because A, I'm not a judge, and B, I don't think I would have anything to do with that as a city councilman, but okay. So I hung on to the violent part, right? If you're going to commit a violent gun crime, which I'm not going to try to sit here and list whatever a violent versus nonviolent gun crime is, I'm going to assume that brandishing is nonviolent, but armed robbery or aggravated is.
Yeah.
Okay. Or shooting into a group of people or shooting into houses is probably considered violent as well. So I said, because I was the first one to answer, I said, if they're over the age of 16, I am absolutely for convicting people for violent gun crimes. And then, because I understand under 16, there are different ways that we can take. But if you're over the age of 16, I think well enough you shouldn't be shooting guns in a violent manner.
Right.
Mr. Koss got up there and he's like, there's no way we can do that to these people, yada, yada. They're impoverished, so on and so forth. Obviously insinuating that it's majority African Americans, which isn't necessarily the case. They just said youth, right? And so I got back up there for the next question, and I said, they clearly stated violent, right? I understand, like, kid brings gun to school, doesn't do anything with it, they catch him. Kids playing with gun outside because dad left it out, right? And there's a ton of things we can talk about as far as
gun safety and
whatever.
Right.
But we're just talking
about that scenario.
Yeah. I understand that, that's a totally different realm than, they grabbed a firearm knowing that they were going to try to commit some sort of violent crime with it or intimidate somebody.
Right.
And I said, the MSU shooter had a violent gun crime that was swept under the rug. And then look where we were at. He didn't have a good response to that.
It's a fact, though.
It is. Yep.
Yep.
And a lot of the people that were in there were like, "Oh crap, he's right." And that was that's one of the things that really made me run too, right? Like the MSU shooting, I talked about that. And so it was, I guess, almost destiny that came up. Let me think of something else he said. They asked me what I didn't. It was Mike or Erica Lynn, the America 20 to Life people. They wrote a question and they asked directly, "What has Mr. Koss not been doing for the community?" Well, I stated it very clearly. I believe, especially now that I've run through the course of all of this, that Mr. Koss continues to have reactive policies to things. He never, ever, ever has done anything proactive. A good example of that, his whole big thing about cleaning up trash. Okay, so when he was a community member, he was doing a nice thing by cleaning up trash, right? And that was his thing. Now he's in a position where he shouldn't have to clean up trash. He should be making legislation or
for other people to do it.
Exactly.
Create a job.
Exactly. I'm not saying that what he does is a bad thing. I'm saying he's now in a position where he could proactively fix that, but he chooses not to because it's his thing.
Right. What's going to happen when he can't do it?
Exactly.
Or if he just stops doing it.
There's not always going to be a Ryan Cost, right? I mean, one day he's not going to be here or he's not going to be able to do it.
And you're so limited as to what you can do with just being one single person.
Exactly. So that's one of the biggest things I bring up is, so that was his big thing. Now he's in a position to fix it, but he never does.
Or at least organize like some sort of community, like pick up Saturdays or something.
Yeah. The only thing that he's done so far that I've seen is that he has worked with Granger, and they're going to do a bulk pickup in like a 4-block radius, like his neighborhood, not even mine. Just like it's 4 streets from Saginaw to Michigan.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, that was nice. I mean, it's going to be good for that area, but what about like me who's directly kitty corner from that little block? That'd be my block. Like, I got stuff I want to get rid of too. So that's the first thing I've seen with him is in regards to trash. And then, oh crap, I just lost my train of thought.
Talk about questions.
Yep, we were talking about questions. Oh, and then I said, I think it's been very clear that Mr. Koss continuously proves that he thinks about the next 5 months, 6 months of this city. He doesn't think about the next 10 to 20 years. When I would go in, if I went into a position like that, I'm thinking about change that would be long term, right? Things, you can make changes that are noticeable relatively quickly, but the real change happens over a long amount of time. And he has done nothing except for the red tags with homes, which I don't agree with the way he went about that anyways, but that's a different conversation. He has done nothing else to think about the longevity of this city. He just does things that affect the next 6 months and then they go away or they don't matter anymore. So
what was done with the Moores River Park or the pool?
Good question. Oh, the pool. Oh, I thought you were talking about the homeless camp because he went down to the homeless camp that was along the river trail.
Yeah, there was that issue too.
And they said they cleaned it up, but I don't think there was anything ever put in place that kept, like, I don't think they do patrols down there. I don't think there's anyone walking down there to.
Where was that at?
That was trying to think. Hold on. The bridge right down here that you go over the bridge and there's the river.
Okay.
What's that little park called? There's like the parking lot right there.
Oh yeah. That's McGuire.
Yep.
Yep.
That was McGuire heading east
towards Hawk Island.
Yeah.
Okay. So in there was a homeless encampment?
Yes.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And there were needles and everything, so they went out there and they cleaned it all up.
I've seen homeless people over there too.
But who's like following up with that?
Right.
It just you did something and then what?
I mean, they more than likely just moved to a different location.
Yeah.
Like I was just recently training for a marathon, so I was constantly running the river trail always, and I'd see homeless people walking around on the trail. Once you get closer to downtown, like right by I can't. There's like under a bridge, like an overpass. There's like 4 or 5 tents on the trail, on the actual trail.
Oh, they just don't care.
Under the bridge.
Yeah.
I'm just like, why is that okay?
It's not.
And who's doing something to help these people? Like, why are they here?
Yeah, nobody. Just let them do their thing. But then they're blocking like what you're using it for its intended purposes, right? Like,
I mean, I'm not saying I'm more important than these people. And
they should have the respect to not set up right on the trail. Right? I mean, that would be like if I was running in front of you or riding my bike and then I stopped my bike in the middle of the trail and I was standing there trying to fix my tire. Well, like, I mean, obviously you go to the side of the trail.
It's off to the side.
Right.
I will say that it is off to the side. It's not directly on the trail, but the trail is connected. So there's an overpass and then there's like this solid like piece of cement. Like it's pretty wide. And the trail goes right through the middle of it. They're off to the side.
Gotcha.
But still, there's 4 or 5 tents, cardboard houses. It's like, why?
It's very encroachy.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
I mean, it's so crazy.
And that doesn't make you feel like you should run there.
No, it doesn't. I feel very unsafe. I feel like I should be carrying a gun when I mean, I've never had an incident where somebody's attacked me, or anything like that, other than the other day, my wife and I were going to Fabiano's on the east side, and we were coming around the corner, and this homeless guy that was standing out front like yelled at us because he wanted money. He's like, "Hey!" And we're just like, he's like, "You!" I'm like, "Me?" And like, it caught me off guard, and so I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Do you have any money?" And I was just like, "No," and I just went inside. But it's like, that was probably one of my only interactions with a homeless person that was aggressive. Yeah. But as far as like seeing like the encampments and stuff, that like a lot of bad things happen there typically, and you don't feel safe just going through them.
Right. No, I understand that.
Especially with the concern of like needles and stuff laying around.
Oh yeah. One of the other big things too was he had in multiple times during that debate talked about how, because we had a really bad storm go through on the east side, if you remember, and all
a couple
those
weeks
trees
ago.
went down. Yeah,
a month ago, whatever it was.
It feels like it was forever ago, but it probably was only a month. Yeah, I mean, every day drags on at this point for me.
That was when the whole city pretty much lost power, right?
Yes.
Yep.
This was my backyard.
Whoa. That's crazy.
Yeah, so I live on Leslie, and Leslie, Shepherd, those kind of 4 streets right there, south of Michigan Ave, north of Kalamazoo, was where those shear winds really hit the hardest.
Wow.
And so we were kind of the epicenter. There, a lot of people were claiming it's a tornado, which I mean, I'll say some of the damage looks tornadic in nature, but obviously meteorologists are saying it's not, that it was just 80-mile-per-hour shear winds. Okay. Well, shingles were ripped off of houses. There's my kayaks. They were thrown around like crazy. We had trees down across our street. We couldn't get in or out because we had 4 power lines down going south towards Kalamazoo, and we had a big old tree going north towards Michigan Ave, so I couldn't even go to work that day. And then check out the side of my house.
Whoa.
I don't have any trees directly over my house. It's about 60 yards from the corner. So a branch fell, the wind hit it. It hit my house so hard it left a dent in the siding and broke my window.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my goodness, like I've never seen anything like that. So anyways, it was terrible. Right?
Yeah.
And so that happened at like, I think it was like 1:30 in the morning. I woke up because we have an AC unit in our bedroom. And I woke up to the sound of the wind. I mean, I've never experienced a tornado personally, but people tell you like the howling wind. Mm-hmm. That's literally what it was. Like I could hear with that window being open, even though I had everything sealed off, I could hear the wind blowing through that AC unit. And It sounded like a werewolf, like right outside my window. So I shot up. And my dog was sitting there shaking. Oh. And I look out that window, and we have the smaller trees growing next to the road there. I saw one of them, no joke, 90 degrees. And my fiance woke up because she felt me jump up, and she's like, what's going on? And I'm like, we need to go downstairs right now. And we're running downstairs, and that's when that branch hit the side of our house, and we heard it through the whole house. And I was like, I'm like, run. And so we ran to the basement.
Oh, my gosh.
And then, no joke, by the time we got to the basement, we were down there for maybe 20, 30 seconds, and it was done. So we hung out for like maybe 3 more minutes after that. And then we went upstairs, and we looked out the front door first, and like people's trash cans were in the street, and there was branches and stuff. And you're like, oh, okay, like it sucked, but it wasn't that bad.
Right.
And then we looked out the back door. That's when we saw, in the dark, all of that. My truck was underneath those branches. I didn't know if it had gotten crushed or not. I checked with my phone light to see if my windshield had gotten crushed, and it hadn't. So I was like, well, thank goodness for that. But I had no idea what the other damage was because I couldn't see it. And then that's when I saw stuff was just thrown around. And anyways, so the next morning, me and Brooke wake up. We're going to Quality Dairy to get coffee because obviously the power's out. Can't make anything. We come back and we start cleaning up the brush. We rent. So we had some help. My landlord hired a couple people to help us out. But we were still being a proactive part of it because it was a lot. Mm. So we're dragging branches, yada, yada. And the first person that comes through is the mayor. So Andy Shore shows up. He's walking up and down all the roads. So I went out there and I talked to him. He knew who I was because obviously I'm running. And I'm like, yeah, it sucks, And he was talking about his ideas for how to clean up the brush. Because by now, at least in front of my house, the brush pile was already about 2 or 2.5 feet tall. And he was like, well, normally what we do is for yard waste like this, we have people bundle it with twine.
Oh my gosh.
He said that to me. And I looked at him, I'm like, don't do that. I said, you got to get trucks to come through and pick this stuff up, man. I'm like,
bring a chipper through.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm picking up branches that are, thicker than my thighs.
Yeah.
And they're pretty big if you can't see them. But they were big. And I'm like, there's no way you can expect everyone to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, we'll probably have something come out. We'll figure it out. And then he went on his way, after shaking my hand, and maybe 30 minutes to an hour later, Ryan showed up. So I went out there, just not even anything serious. I was just like, hey, this is my house. This sucks pretty much. And he basically totally dismissed me, claimed he was awake at 2 a.m. in order to clean up some flooding that was in his street. And then he looked at one of my neighbor's houses and kept on walking down the road. And so then at this debate, he has the gall to say that he was out there helping us. Wow. He was doing all this work. And so I called him out. This is the very last question, or kind of our last statements or whatever. And he had said this for the 3rd time. So I got up there and I said my final statements and whatever. And I stood there for a second and I'm all, methed up. And I'm like, I'm going to say it. And I looked right at him and I said, And Mr. Cost, I am so sick of hearing you say you were out there helping us. I said, you didn't do anything for us. You did exactly what the mayor did. You walked around, you had your little photo shoot, and you're able to say you were out there and you saw it and you knew what was going on. I said, I was out there. That's my home. I said, I cleaned up my yard. I helped my neighbors clean up their yards, especially my 80-year-old neighbor right next door, Peggy, right? I said, I did all of that. I said, you didn't do anything. And then I walked out. I looked at the moderator, it was Jerry, and I said, I'm done here. And I walked out. And I was like, oh, man, I shouldn't have walked out. So I asked Brooke, because she stuck around for his final comments. I'm like, how bad did I mess up? And she's like, it wasn't that bad. She's like, Ryan talked about how no one knows what he does on the back end, which, okay, I guess that, to me, that sounds like kind of a cop-out.
Yeah.
And then Mike Lynn said, don't worry, Ryan, you're going to win anyways. So I guess I didn't miss out on too much.
Mike Lynn, who's...
America Twin of the Life.
He said that.
Yep.
He said that to you. You're going to win the debate.
No, he said that to Ryan that he was going to win after I walked out. He said, don't worry about it, Ryan. You're going to win anyways. So.
Wow.
So I don't think I missed out on too much, but I think I made my point very clear.
Wow. And that's the thing, right? Like, that's the thing that people don't like about politicians is the fact that they're not real. They show up for the fucking photo shoot, and then that's all they care about is the publicity and trying to make themselves look good.
Yep.
That's all they care about.
And I'm way too much of a realist to ever do something like that. Like, I would never sit there and take credit for something and say that I helped.
Yeah.
I would say I witnessed the damage. I saw what you guys were going through.
Yeah.
I would never say I was out there helping. Never would I do that. I mean, that's just, I surround myself with integrity and accountability, and that's how I can go to sleep at night.
Yeah.
Because I know that I did everything to the best of my ability, as, integral as you can. And yeah, it just, I was so irritated and sick, and I was like, oh my gosh, can't believe I did that, but it's okay. We all make choices.
We all make choices, and the thing is, like, I can't personally respect somebody who does that. I can't respect somebody who doesn't hold to their word, who isn't honest, who, I don't know, just not a real person. And that's one thing I've actually appreciated about you in this podcast is, like, you've stayed pretty true to your word. You've always, I mean, the first one didn't go so well because you're just kind of forming your ideas and trying to, like, learn how you wanted to verbalize them.
Yeah, pitch myself basically.
Right.
Yeah.
But your ideas stay the same.
Mm-hmm.
You just change, like you had mentioned, the way you project it.
Yep.
And I respect that. I respect somebody who is also willing to admit that they were wrong, that maybe they should have said something differently. They offended people. They didn't mean to offend them.
Yep.
I respect that. But when you get somebody who doesn't tell the truth and who wants to lie and who wants to just make themselves look good just for the sake of their candidacy, like I can't get behind that.
It's very irritating.
It is. It
kind of rubs that infective nerve that you got already, and you're like, I can't be here right now,
Yeah.
So yeah.
I have no comments about that. You're gonna win anyways thing, but
wow. He's at the end of the day, he's a constituent too. He can say whatever he wants just because he runs a podcast. I mean,
he lives in the east side.
No, they live in Ward 2, I believe now.
Oh, okay. So
they live
in my
down
ward
here somewhere. But they're, to be fair, Mike and Erica were really nice to me.
I was going to ask you about that because I know you were nervous going into their interview, and I was
so nervous.
I watched it because I'm like, I want to see like if they're going to treat you because I had watched what's her name? The
Trini?
Hispanic. Yeah, Trini.
Yep.
I've watched her. Her husband actually works with me.
Yep.
I know her husband. And I watched the way they interviewed her. I watched the way they interviewed Ryan. Ryan might have been after you. Was he after you?
He was. No, he was before me because he was supposed to be. No, he was after me. I don't know if that was like planned or not. Because initially, I was supposed to go after him. So I was like, "That's good. I'm the opponent. I'm ready.
You can oppose everything.
I can oppose things and do whatever."
Right.
And then all of a sudden, it switched, and he got to go before me, and I'm like, dang it, or he got to go after me, and I'm like, dang it. So I went in a little blind, and that's really why I was most nervous, is because you know, when you're the first one to talk, ooh man, you're at the disadvantage, especially with politics.
I was just worried that they weren't going to treat you fairly.
I felt so too.
I thought they did. I thought they actually did a really good job. Michael was really nice.
Yes.
And I know a lot of times I've watched his podcast quite a few times, and he's pretty aggressive when he believes a certain thing, or when he like thinks things should be a certain way. And I thought he was pretty fair.
I think we, as in me, Mike, and Erica, had more in common than they thought we would at the end of the day.
Right.
And so I think they appreciated that, and I think they see that me and Ryan both have upsides. I think they've made their choice with Ryan clear. I'm not sure what that reasoning is. I don't know if it's because they have the established relationship with him already, being on council. And so they're possibly afraid to lose that, right? Which is fair, I think. He talks on their podcast a lot, and so they probably get a lot of useful information from him, and that's probably what that really is. But I think after we had our conversation on their podcast, and we talked afterwards, we kind of all came to the same conclusion, like, maybe if I had run for like the at-large position, they would have been more apt to support me.
Right.
But because I went for the east side, they're kind of going for Ryan.
That makes sense.
Which as I thought about it, I'm like, I probably would have done pretty well at large overall, I think. I don't know. It's just a lot. That's a big amount when you compare it from like one ward versus the entire city.
Right.
You know, so, but I made my choice.
You made your choice, and you're here. You're doing it now. You made it through the first election.
I did,
and so find out about the second.
It was really interesting. They send the Scantron machines. They send a report to you. I didn't know that when you run, and so I'm curious if like that happens for like presidential too, like if like they get like an email that goes straight to whatever outpost is for that presidential campaign, and then maybe they compile it and they send it and they get to the news articles, and
interesting.
But yeah, so well before they had called it, I got an email with the Scantron results, and it told me exactly how many votes Mr. Koss got, how many votes I got, and how many votes DeMarco got. And I saw that I had a significant amount more than DeMarco, and then I knew at that point I had won.
Why do you think you had more than him? Was it the fact that he doesn't get out there? Yeah, because I invited him. I invited him on the podcast, and he's like, he didn't. I don't even know if he responded. He might have responded, but was like, yeah, maybe some other time.
He doesn't campaign.
So like, I don't understand why somebody wouldn't do that. I mean, if you see your opponents doing that, wouldn't you want to? How do you think you're going to win? I
don't know. I've thought of that a lot.
Are you just throwing your name in the hat to see what happens?
It seems like it, yeah. Because he sent a proxy to the church event that we went to. And then at the League of Women Voters, he had submitted a letter for them to read, because we had like a panel, quick introduction. And so they started to read the question, and the lady only got through like maybe a quarter or a third of it before the time ran out. And I'm like, dude, like I don't understand how he feels like he would
win. Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what he thinks.
That's wild.
And he's run for multiple positions.
Has he ever won anything?
Nope.
Well, that would probably be why.
Yeah. So.
Well, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast again.
Yeah.
We're an hour and 14 minutes in, so
I like this podcast a lot, man. I like to be able to talk a little more candidly, and not feel like I have to what I want to say, like
be on edge.
Yeah, like
you're not
just having a conversation.
You're not getting attacked. Anybody who comes on this podcast,
right,
regardless of what I think about them or like their beliefs, I I just talk to them.
Yeah.
And I don't need to force my opinions out there. Nobody cares about my opinions. I don't even care that people know my opinion.
Exactly. Yep.
I just want to like get your information out there and just have a conversation in doing so.
Yeah, I like that a lot because most of the things that I do is more like, all right, how do you believe in this, and this, and you feel like you're kind of on repeat, right? Like you're saying the same stuff over and over again, and so when I come to something like this, I'm like, well, we just get to have a conversation, talk a little bit more in depth about something that we might both be interested in, and
it's getting to know the commonality of somebody. And that's all that really matters. Is if somebody watches this, they can be like, well, I don't agree with his idea in homelessness, but I kind of like the fact that he's just talking about it. I like the fact that they're just having the conversation. He seems normal. They can kind of get an idea of like the kind of person you are based on the conversation.
Exactly.
And really, that's all that matters. Because like at the end of the day, if you elect somebody into office, you don't have to agree with every single thing that they stand for. And that's the problem. Like, that's the problem with politics and anything. People get this, they want to join this ideology of like, well, this is my guy because he has this, and this, and this, and this.
Yep.
And he's not my guy because he believes this or he thinks this. And it's like, well, you don't necessarily have to agree with that. It doesn't even necessarily mean just because you think that you're going to push that into your candidacy or into your position.
Right.
It's wild. It's bonkers.
All right,
cool, man. Well, thanks for doing this. It was a pleasure, and I can't wait to see the kind of hate I'm going to get from this episode.
Vote VandeGuchte.
All right, man. All right, bye.